Welcome to the 360 Pulse podcast, the show where we explore the latest innovations in immersive technology, real-time situational awareness, and the future of panoramic imaging. I am your host, Jennifer Sertle, VP of Marketing at Circle Optics, where our mission is to deliver situational intelligence for a safer, smarter, more immersive world. In this episode, we have a guest, Doug Anderson. He's the founder and president of DCA Live, which is a Washington, D.C.-based platform that spotlights the region's most dynamic companies and leaders through curated events, salon-style gatherings, and a very widely read daily newsletter. He launched DCA Live in 2014 to celebrate the growth, innovation, and leadership across technology, venture capital, cybersecurity, government contracting, and the broader DC business community. He's been pollinating for over a decade, which is amazing. His career spans more than 25 years in media and events with senior roles at Bloomberg BNA, Kennedy Information, AOL, and New River Media. Earlier in his journey, Doug produced national public television programs including Think Tank and Follow the Money, as well as documentaries on economic and social change. And he began his professional path as a researcher for the American Enterprise Institute. He is known for building communities to bring founders together, investors and executives as well, to support economic momentum. And our very own CEO, Zach Niazi and Ian Gauger, are going to be attending one of DCA Live's events called Capital in DC this December 8th and 9th. And that is exactly why I wanted to have Doug on our show today. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jen. Nice to be here.
So you founded DCA Live with a mission to connect the leaders of Washington, D.C. with the business community. Tell me, how did you decide to make this platform?
Well, I spent most of my career in media and trying to find creative and innovative ways to get people together, to exchange ideas and to build relationships. I had a previous venture that I was part of called BizNow Media, going back, starting almost 20 years. And about 10 years ago, we sold that business. And so I was left with trying to create something from scratch. And I wanted to use some of the models and the formats that I thought worked best. So launched DCA Live in 2014, and largely as an event business to recognize leaders and interested in innovative companies in the Washington region. And since then, I've grown into new industry areas as well as new formats for events. And then 2 years ago, I launched Capital, which is a venture capital conference based here in DC. And then this year, we're doing Capital Dual Use, which is a division of Capital, but focused on the space around government technology.
The cross-pollination that you're doing is becoming more mainstream. But when you started it, it wasn't that popular. How did you decide that these, that the VCs need to be industry, need to meet real estate, need to meet, it's just an interesting connection.
Well, I guess I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned that there are there's sort of a professional networking class out there, and these are largely folks in professional services firms who need to prospect and develop new business. So they're looking for places where they can meet CEOs, CFOs, other C-level executives. So that part was a given. The more challenging part was getting the CEOs, CFOs, and other C-level executives engaged. And so we've come up with some innovative ways of doing that. One is through recognition programs, and the other is through salon-style dinners where they can meet with their peers and discuss ideas and be part of the conversation.
And there's one thing about meeting people at your events. Do you have advice for people on how they can build traction after the meetings?
Yeah, I think, nobody likes an aggressive salesperson, right? So it's all about building that relationship. And building that relationship really comes down to finding some common things. And those common things could be areas of professional interest, but they could also be areas of personal interest. So one of the things that we really try to do is get our executives to open up a little bit their personal lives and talk about the sports teams that they follow, or where they go on vacation, or what restaurants they like. And I think by making them, sort of humanizing them, it provides other contact points for folks that would like to maybe do business with them. So maybe they're both Buffalo Bills fans, or maybe they both, go to Martha's Vineyard, or you're a Buffalo Bills fan. That was just a wild guess. and whatever it may be. But you look for ways and touch points where you can kind of create an opening where there can be a relationship, and then after that, some trust can be formed, and then hopefully they can do business together. But that's kind of the idea is. Nobody wants to get a sales brochure the next day after a meeting, but what they would love to do is get a restaurant recommendation or a show recommendation or something else that just creates more of a human-to-human relationship.
That's so exciting to hear because everything seems to be going mechanized, but you're saying that deepening relationships has more to actually how are your lives in common versus how is your work in common? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's one way to view it, right? I mean, there's going to be things that people have work in common, but if we're being honest, most services that people offer are they're not commodities, but there's a lot of other people offering a very similar service, if not identical service. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? The best example would be, in real estate, you choose somebody to lease office space for you. On your behalf. And, there's 10 firms and maybe 200 people in the DC region that could probably do a fantastic job doing that for you. So how are you going to choose? Well, you're going to choose because you're going to identify somebody that you have some kind of common thing with. And it's just going to build trust and it's going to build a relationship. And that's how the business is going to get done. And I think the people out there that are seeking to develop business and the ones that are successful in this do this best. They really do understand how these kind of relationships can form and grow over time.
Dual use is becoming, that we have been looking at a lot of accelerators and things that are accepting dual use because our camera system is dual use. Are you seeing that being more popular in the DC region?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the government's the biggest customer. The federal government's the biggest customer in the world, always has been, and I think in our lifetimes always will be. I think they've been, for many years, a good customer, but to very big organizations that can offer a whole range of things. But increasingly, they're looking to smaller companies that have specialized technologies. To sort of fill their needs as the world gets more dangerous and more complex, and they can't just go with the same old contract vehicles anymore. They're really looking for innovation. They're looking for the community that we're building around here of companies that have great technologies to meet specific needs and hopefully advance, our national security and other sort of big federal interests and problems that they're trying to solve.
And we have a lot of students that listen to this program. And I'm wondering, as you were building the early days of DCA Live, is there a lesson that you wish you would have understood sooner that you now know with so much experience?
Well, I can look back on my long career in running events and doing things and attempt to answer that. I would say right now, there's so much content out there with YouTube and other social media channels. There's so much digital content that getting sort of insight into what's going on out there from experts is just really not that hard to do. So events have to be curated in a way where you're really putting the right people in the same room together and letting them engage with each other. Now you have to do some speakers on a stage and some panels. It's sort of, you have to have some reason to bring people together. But at the end of the day, it's really not about that. It's really about having the right people in the room at the same time and letting it go from there. And so you have to be, creative and innovative about how you get those people in the room. But once you do, that's kind of the job. So I've definitely over my career moved away from viewing, the keynote speaker or whatever it might be on stage is the most important thing. And really the people in the audience being the right people is being the main thing that I'm focused on.
It reminds me, I don't know if you saw that 1999 videotape of David Bowie, and he was talking about the internet way back then. And he saw a day that the audience would be as important as the performer. And I just, in hearing you right now, I'm just like, wow, that kind of echoes that David Bowie sentiment of that both have to work to create that experience, which is relatively new in my lifetime as a Generation X.
I like the idea of David Bowie and Doug Anderson in the same sentence together.
I'm gonna send you that video. I'm also probably gonna send that video in the clip of this, just because I think that there is so much synergy in that particular point of view that you had. Can you tell me how long have you been in DC?
Well, most of my life. I moved here when I was in fifth grade, and I've lived in this region with the exception of college and graduate school since then. And I'm now in my early 50s, moving into mid 50s soon. So it's been a long time.
And I guess my question there was, just learning about your passion for the region and wondering how has it changed within the last maybe 5 years? Have you noticed a significant change?
I have, and things ebb and flow here a bit when it comes to tech. But I mean, like at the end of the day, the DC economy, every day that goes by, every year that goes by, becomes more diversified. Yes, the federal government drives everything, but we have over the past couple of decades developed other industry clusters here that are very important. Like, for example, the hospitality industry is very important here. We have Hilton and Marriott, and all the major hotel brands are headquartered in this region, and most people don't know that. We have other little clusters of communities here, like the education, technology business. There's lots of companies here, like Blackboard, that are very important. So we've diversified. And then, the government has spurred innovation in new industries, right? So cyber being the biggest example, but now AI and quantum computing and machine learning, these are all things that have sprung up here because the government's a customer, but they're not traditional sort of government, procurement plays. So we've seen just a lot of new entrants there. And then, of course, the city has just, grown and become more international, and, the retail and tourism industries here, I think, have grown in real estate. There's new parts of town that didn't exist when I was, a kid or even a young professional. So it's just a more interesting and diverse city now.
Like when we started as professionals in my 50s as well, LinkedIn didn't come until I was in my 30s. The idea that these kids, and even my son, who's a freshman at Clemson University, has access to LinkedIn is quite remarkable in terms of what they're exposed to. Two more questions. One is really personal for me, is in media, how do you manage all of the inputs? And, you managing so many events and having to be current in the trends and the people, how do you manage that much complexity?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that. So one of the things I do is host regular salon dinners, as you noted earlier. And so I do read a lot and I look for things, but I also hear a lot, right? So I'm a couple of times a week at a dinner with CEOs or other leaders, real estate developers or venture capitalists or what have you. And I just hear a lot. So I think there's no substitute for that. And that's sort of the value that I pitch to others for my business and coming to my events, but I'm also the beneficiary of it as well. And then I can hear directly from them on key things and issues. Of course, I look at social media, and I'm guilty of scrolling through Twitter more than I'd like to be, but I find a lot of information that way too. And I see stuff on LinkedIn. I look at the Drudge Report and other sort of curated news sites. What I don't really do anymore, which is sort of regrettable, is thumb through a newspaper very much. I don't read news in the way that we used to consume it, back in the earlier times.
So what I'm hearing in terms of being incredibly organized, as well as including really good food and really interesting conversations, sounds like it's the buffer that's working really well for you. And the last question, tell me more about your vision for DCA Live as it grows beyond Capital.
So there are a number of components to it. One is I've discovered that these executive gatherings, what I call roundtables, for lack of a better word, but places where leaders can come together in an informal environment and share ideas and get connected, there just seems to be an incredible demand for that. So DCA Live is ramping up to create more of those and more opportunities in both the DC region, but we're also looking at some new regions, including the New York City area and Atlanta metro area and some others where we can, basically apply the same format in those places. So that's one. And then two, it's capital, I think, has a lot of room to grow. I mean, it almost grew 70% from year one in 2024 to this year. And I think it's got a long ways to go. So we're investing in that and trying to grow it. And then at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know where the business goes from here, but I do think that those who, especially in the age of AI, and so much, that's done behind screens and online and so on. Those that can figure out how to get people together in person for sort of meaningful and worthwhile interactions, there's going to be a market for that. That's going to continue to be strong. So it's our job to kind of continue to figure out how to improve on that and how to expand it in a way that ensures the quality and that we're delivering what we say.
I love that. So beyond connection, there is depth, and it sounds like that's the course you're headed on. You've been listening to Doug Anderson of DCA Live, and I'd like to thank some of our partners and supporters that make this podcast possible: the Institute of Optics, Genius New York, Luminate Accelerator, AFWorks, Cider Technologies, Autonomy Global, and of course, AUVSI. I want to also acknowledge my friend Doug Brisby at The Bridge at El Segundo, Jacqueline Blackburn at Decisive Point, and Angela Vujale Fitzsimmons with Monroe County Apex Program. I am Jennifer Sertle, the host of 360 Pulse podcast, produced by Circle Optics. And as you know, Circle Optics, our mission is to deliver situational intelligence for a safer, smarter, more immersive world. You can reach me at jennifer@circleoptics.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Still Twitter, and Blue Sky. Thank you for joining us.